They thought firing me for the CEO's nephew would be the end of my story. What they didn't know was that I owned the trademark to their $400 million brand name, and they were about to find out exactly what that meant. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The mahogany conference table gleamed under the harsh fluorescent lights as I sat across from three executives who couldn't meet my eyes. Chen, the chief operating officer, shuffled papers nervously while David Martinez, head of legal, cleared his throat for the third time in 2 minutes. At the head of the table sat William Ashford himself, the CEO whose silver hair and expensive suit couldn't hide the discomfort written across his face. Alexandra, we appreciate everything you've contributed to Pinnacle Dynamics over the past 8 years, Rebecca began, her voice artificially sweet. But we're restructuring the marketing department and unfortunately your position is being eliminated. I leaned back in my chair, studying their faces. 8 years. 8 years of building their brand from a startup nobody had heard of into a household name worth nearly $500 million. 8 years of 60-hour weeks, missed family dinners, and canceled vacations. 8 years of watching less qualified men get promoted while I did the work that made their success possible. Restructuring, I repeated slowly. That's an interesting word choice. David shifted uncomfortably. The decision has already been made, Alexandra. We've prepared a generous severance package. Through the glass walls of the conference room, I could see the bustling office floor. Marketing assistants hurried between cubicles. Account managers spoke animatedly on phone calls, and creative directors huddled around computer screens. All of them working under the banner of a brand I had created, nurtured, and protected like my own child. Let me guess, I said, my voice steady despite the fire building in my chest. Blake Ashford is taking over my responsibilities. The silence that followed was deafening. William's jaw tightened, almost imperceptibly. But it was enough. Blake Ashford, his 26-year-old nephew, who had graduated from business school 6 months ago, with mediocre grades, and an inflated sense of entitlement. Blake, who had spent more time networking at company parties than learning the intricacies of brand management. Blake, who had once suggested they change their logo to make it more millennial-friendly, without understanding that their current logo was already generating millions in recognition value. Blake brings fresh perspectives to the role, Rebecca said, her rehearsed response falling flat in the sterile air of the conference room. Fresh perspectives. I almost laughed. The only thing fresh about Blake was his inexperience and his last name. But I knew better than to voice that observation. In corporate America, blood runs thicker than competence, and I had learned that lesson the hard way more times than I cared to count. I see, I said, standing slowly. And when does this transition take effect? Immediately, David replied, sliding a manila envelope across the table. Security will escort you to your office to collect your personal belongings. Your access cards will be deactivated within the hour. The envelope sat between us like a peace offering wrapped in legal jargon. Inside, I knew, would be the standard non-disclosure agreement, the non-compete clause, and a check that was supposed to buy my silence and cooperation. They had calculated exactly how much my dignity was worth to them, and they had probably congratulated themselves on their generosity. I picked up the envelope without opening it. I assume Blake will be taking over the Meridian account launch next month? William nodded, speaking for the first time since the meeting began. He's already been briefed on the campaign strategy. The Meridian account. 6 months of research, focus groups, and creative development. 6 months of my life poured into what would become the company's biggest product launch in 5 years. The irony wasn't lost on me that they were firing the architect of their success to make room for someone whose greatest achievement was being born into the right family. Well then, I said, tucking the envelope under my arm. I suppose there's nothing left to discuss. As I reached for the door handle, Rebecca's voice stopped me. Alexandra, we hope you understand this isn't personal. It's just business. I turned back to face them, these 3 people who had just upended my career with the casual indifference of someone swatting a fly. They sat there in their expensive suits, surrounded by the trappings of success that my work had helped them achieve, and they had the audacity to tell me it wasn't personal. Of course, I replied, nothing personal at all. The walk back to my office felt like a funeral procession. Colleagues I had worked alongside for years suddenly found their computer screens fascinating, their phone calls urgent, their paperwork absolutely critical. The news had already spread through the office grapevine with the speed of wildfire, and nobody wanted to be seen talking to the walking dead. My office was a corner space with windows overlooking the city skyline, a view I had earned through years of dedication and results. The walls were covered with awards, campaign materials, and photos from product launches. My desk held a collection of branded merchandise from successful campaigns, each piece representing hours of strategic thinking and creative problem-solving. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Security guard Marcus Thompson appeared in my doorway, his expression apologetic. We had chatted countless times in the elevator, shared stories about our kids, complained about the weather. Now he stood there with an empty cardboard box, transformed from a friendly face into an instrument of my professional execution. "I'm sorry about this, Miss Carter," he said quietly. "I heard what happened." "It's not your fault, Marcus," I replied, beginning to pack my personal items. "You're just doing your job." As I emptied my desk drawers, my fingers brushed against a folder I kept in the back of the bottom drawer. Inside were documents I hadn't looked at in years. Papers from the early days when Pinnacle Dynamics was just William Ashford's ambitious dream, and a handful of employees working out of a converted warehouse. I had been employee number 4, hired as a marketing coordinator when the company was still called Ashford Solutions. William had big dreams, but no clear vision of how to communicate them to the world. That's where I came in, fresh out of graduate school, with a master's degree in marketing and a head full of ideas about brand identity and consumer psychology. The transformation hadn't happened overnight. It took months of research, countless revisions, and more late nights than I could count. I studied their target demographic, analyzed their competitors, and crafted a brand identity that would resonate with consumers while setting them apart in a crowded marketplace. The name Pinnacle Dynamics had come to me during one of those late-night brainstorming sessions. It conveyed aspiration, movement, and excellence. Everything William wanted his company to represent, but more importantly, it felt right. It rolled off the tongue, looked professional on business cards, and had the kind of memorable quality that would stick in consumers' minds. I had presented the name to William and the small team of early employees in a conference room that doubled as a storage closet. The presentation had been thorough, complete with market research, focus group data, and a comprehensive brand strategy. Everyone had loved it immediately. "This is it," William had said, his eyes bright with excitement. "This is exactly what we need." Within a week, we had filed the trademark paperwork. As the marketing coordinator who had conceived and developed the brand, my name went on the application as the trademark holder. It was standard practice for many companies in those early days. Have the employee who created the intellectual property hold the trademark to expedite the process, then transfer it to the company later. Except the transfer had never happened. In the chaos of rapid growth, product development, and hiring new employees, the trademark transfer had been pushed to the bottom of the priority list. There were always more pressing matters: investor meetings, product launches, client presentations. The legal department was understaffed, and trademark transfers weren't considered urgent when there were contracts to negotiate and deals to close. Years passed. The company grew from a startup to a major player in their industry. The Pinnacle Dynamics brand became synonymous with quality and innovation, generating hundreds of millions in revenue. But through all the growth and success, the trademark remained in my name. I had reminded David about the transfer several times over the years, but he had always brushed it off. "We'll get to it," he would say. "It's not a priority right now." Eventually, I stopped bringing it up. The trademark was safe, the company was thriving, and I assumed we would handle the paperwork eventually. Now, as I packed my belongings under the watchful eye of security, I realized that eventually had just arrived. The cardboard box felt heavier than it should have as I carried it to the elevator. 8 years of my professional life reduced to a collection of personal items that could fit in a container designed for shipping products. The elevator descended in silence, Marcus standing beside me with the awkward discomfort of a man who had seen this scene play out too many times. In the lobby, I signed out for the final time, turning in my access cards and parking pass. The receptionist, a young woman named Jennifer, who had always greeted me with a bright smile, could barely look at me as she processed my departure. "Take care of yourself, Miss Carter," she whispered when Marcus was distracted by his radio. "I will," I replied. "And Jennifer, you're too smart for this place. Don't let them convince you otherwise." The late afternoon sun hit my face as I stepped onto the sidewalk, the cardboard box balanced against my hip. Around me, the city hummed with its usual energy. People rushing to catch buses, talking on cell phones, living their lives without knowing that my world had just been turned upside down. I thought about calling my sister, telling her what had happened, seeking the comfort of family outrage and support. I thought about going home to my apartment, opening a bottle of wine, and wallowing in the injustice of it all. I thought about updating my resume and starting the soul-crushing process of job hunting at 42 years old. Instead, I hailed a taxi and gave the driver an address I hadn't visited in years. The law office of Patricia Hendricks occupied the 15th floor of a downtown high-rise, all glass and steel reaching toward the sky. Patricia had been my law school roommate before I switched to marketing, and we had maintained a friendship built on mutual respect and occasional professional consultation. Her receptionist recognized me immediately. "Alexandra, it's been ages." "Patricia's with a client, but she should be free in about 20 minutes. I settled into a leather chair in the waiting area, the cardboard box at my feet serving as a tangible reminder of the morning's events. The law office was the opposite of Pinnacle Dynamics. Quiet, dignified, focused on substance rather than flash. Oil paintings hung on the walls instead of motivational posters, and the furniture was chosen for comfort and durability rather than making a statement about corporate culture. Patricia appeared exactly 20 minutes later, her graying hair pulled back in a professional bun, and her sharp eyes taking in my appearance with the practiced assessment of someone who had spent decades reading people. "Alexandra," she said, extending her hand, "this is unexpected. Are you all right?" "I've been better," I admitted. "Do you have time to discuss a trademark issue?" Her eyebrows rose slightly. "Of course. Come into my office." Patricia's office was a sanctuary of legal knowledge, with law books lining the walls and case files organized with military precision. She gestured for me to take a seat across from her mahogany desk, then settled into her chair with the focused attention of a surgeon preparing for a complex operation. "Tell me what's happening," she said simply. I told her everything: the meeting, the firing, Blake's promotion, and the years of work that had been dismissed with corporate euphemisms and legal documents. Patricia listened without interruption, occasionally making notes on a yellow legal pad. When I finished, she set down her pen and leaned back in her chair. "And the trademark?" "Still in my name," I said. "Has been for 8 years." Patricia's expression didn't change, but I caught a glimmer of something in her eyes. Interest. Professional curiosity. Perhaps even the faintest hint of satisfaction. "Do you have the original filing documents?" I opened the folder I had retrieved from my desk drawer, spreading the papers across her desk. Patricia examined them with the thoroughness of an archaeologist studying ancient artifacts, cross-referencing dates and signatures. "This is interesting," she said finally. "Very interesting indeed." "Interesting how?" Patricia looked up from the documents, and for the first time since I had entered her office, she smiled. "Interesting as in Pinnacle Dynamics just made a $400 million mistake." The documents spread across Patricia's desk told a story that even the most expensive corporate lawyers couldn't rewrite. 8 years ago, when Pinnacle Dynamics was nothing more than William Ashford's ambitious dream, I had filed trademark application number 87,654,321 for the brand name that would eventually become worth $400 million. The application was thorough, comprehensive, and legally bulletproof. "They can't use the name without your permission," Patricia explained, her finger tracing the official seal on the trademark certificate. "Every product they sell, every advertisement they run, every piece of marketing material they produce, It's all using your intellectual property. I stared at the papers, feeling a mixture of vindication and disbelief wash over me. But they've been using it for years. Doesn't that create some kind of implied consent? Patricia shook her head. Not without a formal licensing agreement. And based on what you've told me, no such agreement exists. They've been operating under the assumption that they owned the trademark, but assumption isn't ownership in the eyes of the law. The implications began to sink in. Every billboard with the Pinnacle Dynamics logo, every television commercial, every business card and company vehicle, all of it was technically unauthorized use of my trademarked property. The brand I had created and nurtured had become a goldmine, but I still held the deed to the mine. What are my options? I asked. Patricia's smile grew wider. Oh, Alexandra, you have more options than you realize. Over the next 2 hours, Patricia outlined a strategy that was both elegant and devastating. We could demand immediate cessation of trademark use, which would effectively shut down their operations overnight. We could seek damages for 8 years of unauthorized commercial use. We could negotiate a licensing agreement that would make me wealthy beyond my wildest dreams. Or we could do all three. The beauty of trademark law, Patricia explained, is that it's designed to protect creators like you. The legal system recognizes that brand names have value, and that value belongs to whoever holds the trademark. As we talked, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years. Genuine excitement about my professional future. For too long, I had allowed myself to be taken for granted, to be treated as replaceable, despite being irreplaceable. I had accepted smaller offices, passed over promotions, and condescending comments from men who couldn't have built what I had built if their lives depended on it. There's something else you should know, Patricia said, pulling out her laptop. I did a quick search while you were reviewing the documents. Pinnacle Dynamics is in the middle of negotiating a merger with Consolidated Industries. The deal is worth $1.2 billion. My breath caught. Consolidated Industries was a massive conglomerate that specialized in acquiring successful mid-sized companies and integrating them into their portfolio. If Pinnacle Dynamics was acquired by Consolidated, William Ashford and his investors would become extraordinarily wealthy overnight. When is the merger supposed to close? I asked. According to the business journals, they're planning to announce it next month. The deal hinges on Pinnacle Dynamics maintaining their current market position and brand recognition. I felt a slow smile spread across my face. Brand recognition, the very thing they had just fired me for creating. Patricia, I said, I think it's time to remind Pinnacle Dynamics exactly who owns their most valuable asset. The next morning, I woke up with a sense of purpose I hadn't felt in months. Instead of the familiar dread of another day of corporate politics and underappreciation, I felt energized by the possibility of finally taking control of my own destiny. I spent the morning at my kitchen table, reviewing every document Patricia had given me, and researching trademark law with the thoroughness of a graduate student preparing for comprehensive exams. The more I learned, the stronger my position became. Trademark infringement wasn't just a civil matter. It was a federal offense with serious penalties. Companies that used trademarked names without permission could face fines, injunctions, and orders to pay damages dating back to the first unauthorized use. In some cases, the trademark holder could even claim the profits generated by the unauthorized use. $400 million in annual revenue. 8 years of growth. Profit margins that had made William Ashford wealthy and his investors very happy. All of it built on a foundation they didn't actually own. My phone rang at 10:30. The caller ID showed a number I didn't recognize, but when I answered, I heard a familiar voice. Alexandra? This is Jennifer from Pinnacle Dynamics. I know I'm not supposed to be calling you, but I thought you should know. Blake Ashford just called an emergency meeting with the entire marketing department. Jennifer was taking a significant risk by calling me. Company policies strictly prohibited contact with terminated employees, and she could face disciplinary action if anyone discovered our conversation. But her loyalty meant more to me than any corporate policy. What kind of emergency meeting? I asked. He's trying to make changes to the Meridian campaign. He wants to rebrand the entire product line and launch under a different name. The creative team is in panic mode because we're supposed to present to the client next week. I closed my eyes, feeling a mixture of anger and sadness. The Meridian campaign represented months of careful research and strategic planning. We had tested every element with focus groups, analyzed consumer response data, and crafted messaging that would resonate with our target demographic. Blake was about to destroy 6 months of work because he wanted to put his own stamp on the project. Jennifer, I appreciate you telling me this, but you need to be careful. Don't do anything that could jeopardize your job. I know, she said quietly, but what he's doing isn't right. Everyone knows it, but nobody wants to speak up. After we hung up, I sat in my kitchen staring out the window at the city skyline. Somewhere out there, Blake Ashford was destroying the work I had created, and his uncle was counting the money from a merger built on intellectual property that didn't belong to him. I picked up my phone and called Patricia. I'm ready to move forward, I said when she answered. Excellent. I've already drafted the preliminary documents. When do you want to serve them? I thought about the Meridian campaign, about Jennifer's nervousness, about all the talented people at Pinnacle Dynamics who were watching their work get dismantled by incompetence and nepotism. Today, I said. Let's do it today. Patricia's law firm specialized in intellectual property cases, and they moved with the precision of a military operation. By noon, a process server was walking through the lobby of Pinnacle Dynamics with a manila envelope containing documents that would change everything. The cease and desist letter was straightforward and devastating. It demanded immediate cessation of all unauthorized use of the Pinnacle Dynamics trademark, notification of all clients and partners regarding the trademark dispute, and preservation of all financial records related to revenue generated by the trademarked brand name. More importantly, it included a detailed explanation of my legal rights as the trademark holder, and a demand for damages covering 8 years of unauthorized commercial use. I wasn't at the office to see William Ashford's reaction when he received the documents, but I could imagine it. The confusion, the anger, the frantic calls to David Martinez demanding to know how this could have happened. I could picture David scrambling through old files, searching for a trademark transfer that had never been executed. My phone started ringing at 2 o'clock. First David Martinez, then Rebecca Chen, then William Ashford himself. I let every call go to voicemail, each message more desperate than the last. Alexandra, this is David. We need to talk immediately. There seems to be some confusion about the trademark filing, and I'm sure we can resolve this quickly. Alexandra, it's Rebecca. I know we had some difficult conversations yesterday, but we value our relationship with you, and we'd like to find a mutually beneficial solution. Alexandra, this is William Ashford. I think there's been a misunderstanding, and I'd appreciate the opportunity to discuss this with you personally. I deleted each message without responding. For 8 years, they had ignored my contributions, overlooked my achievements, and taken my work for granted. Now they wanted to talk. At 4 o'clock, Patricia called with an update. They've lawyered up, she said. Big firm, expensive attorneys, the works. They're claiming the trademark should have been transferred to the company as part of your employment agreement. Do they have a case? Not really. Your employment contract is standard boilerplate language about intellectual property developed during work hours belonging to the company. But trademark law is specific. The person who files the application holds the trademark unless there's a written agreement transferring it. No such agreement exists. I felt a surge of satisfaction. They were scrambling, throwing money at lawyers and hoping expensive legal representation could solve a problem created by their own negligence and arrogance. What happens next? They'll probably try to negotiate. They can't afford a prolonged legal battle, especially with the merger pending. Consolidated Industries won't want to acquire a company embroiled in intellectual property disputes. That evening, I treated myself to dinner at a restaurant I had always wanted to try but never had time for during my corporate days. The food was excellent, the wine was better, and for the first time in months, I felt truly relaxed. As I walked home through the city streets, I thought about the people still working late at Pinnacle Dynamics, probably trying to figure out how to salvage the Meridian campaign and explain the trademark situation to confused clients. I thought about Blake Ashford, whose first week as marketing director was turning into a nightmare of legal complications and damaged relationships. Most of all, I thought about the young woman I had been 8 years ago, working late nights in a converted warehouse, believing that hard work and dedication would be rewarded with respect and recognition. She had been naive about office politics and corporate loyalty, but she had been right about one thing. She had created something valuable. Now it was time to claim what was rightfully mine. My apartment felt different that night, filled with possibility instead of disappointment. I opened my laptop and began researching something I had never seriously considered before: starting my own marketing consultancy. The idea had always seemed too risky, too uncertain compared to the steady paycheck and benefits of corporate employment. But now, with the potential for a substantial settlement from Pinnacle Dynamics, I could afford to take risks I had never been able to take before. I spent hours reading about successful women entrepreneurs who had left corporate careers to build their own companies. Their stories were inspiring and terrifying in equal measure: tales of financial struggle, personal sacrifice, and ultimately, the freedom that came from owning your own success. By midnight, I had filled 3 pages with business ideas, potential clients, and strategies for building a consulting practice that would leverage my years of experience while allowing me to work with companies that valued creativity and integrity over politics and nepotism. The next morning brought news that would change everything once again. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.